about to get started, so find your places, please. And I first and foremost want to, for all of you to know, this is the inaugural presentation, lecture, conversation in the new A-Frame Theater. And so I think of this piece as a kind of a blessing of the theater and all the things that we're going to do. We had a musical performance here. That was the first time we heard music in here, and now it's the first time we're going to have a lecture or a conversation like this in here. And to me, this is the power, it's perfect segue, I think, the power of philanthropy that makes things like this happen. That's going to be the theme of our conversation today, and nothing happens in this world without fundraising, relationships, which is the foundation and basis for fundraising, and coffee. There's lots of it. And it was the very first thing I bought when I moved into the building next door. We had a campaign to raise the funding to renovate it's a former National Guard armory. And back before then, we were in the back of a business park, as a few of you recall or remember us when we were there. And this was the moment in which I got a building that was an empty shell with a coffee machine. It was the first thing I bought before even I bought my first chair or table. And I remember when we were fundraising for the first time, and no one really teaches you how to do this stuff. Which is something we're going to talk about the importance of guidance and advice, because it's something that so few people really know how it's actually done, which is why I'm so excited to be here. And it just makes me recall when Tom Backer was on our board of directors here, and I remember when we had our first site visit from a foundation. It was Parsons that came, and the CEO at the time kind of came to me, and we met her outside, and Tom was there, and she goes, I don't even know why I'm here, but it's a favor to him. So, and by the end, she's like, let's talk about what needs you have. And I was like, oh my God, that happened in one meeting because Tom. And that's the magic of having somebody who's an advocate and an ambassador. Lisa is someone who, I swear to God, knows half of this town. How many, proof is in the pudding here, how many of you is your first time here at the museum? Raise your hands. I mean, that's most of you. So that's a credit to you, Lisa. Thank you. We need that. We all need that. We all need advocates, ambassadors, and connectors trying to introduce us to new folks, especially when you're a small nonprofit like we are. Venda is a word that means transformation or change. It's the way we think about the world in which we live in. It's in constant change and flux. And as you see, it's also a museum that doesn't have a name associated with it, like Hammer or Getty or other, hugely wealthy person, which means it's a grassroots organization that's really grown up from just a few of us to now 35 of us. And yeah, I mean, it's an amazing journey. And next up, this building will be finally complete in about 2 months, and then we'll start an artist residency program next door. So we're going to be building affordable housing, which is coming next. So it's a very exciting time for us, and this is why it's a perfect time to talk with Lisa Greer. So Lisa is, I think, the only person that I know of, and I've confirmed this with a couple others as well, who really understands philanthropy from both sides of the table. What it means to be a philanthropist, what the priorities are, what the hopes are, what the expectations, frankly, are. And from the other side, what can nonprofits do to maximize their connections with funders, to really advocate for their own positions, and to forge a connection. Lisa's first book, which by the way is available as an audiobook as well, so it can accompany you in the car. Philanthropy Revolution, How to Inspire Donors, Build Relationships, and Make a Difference. And we're going to be, that's that one, and then we're going to be speaking today about her newest book, The Essential Fundraiser's Handbook. And both, by the way, are on sale here at the the museum, so be sure to pick them up. So one of her comments, just to kick things off, is that nonprofits need to do more listening, so I should shut up and hand it over to her and ask you to give some of your insights and expertise as a donor and to help us kick things off to tell us about the book and how you became a philanthropist.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it, and we're so fortunate to be able to be in this absolutely beautiful building and beautiful room. So, and thanks to Roy Kaufman for making a lot of that happen, as well as the board. I also, just before I answer the question, want to thank Abby Sher for telling me about this place many, many years ago.
Abby!
And to Rob Eshman. Where are you, Rob?
Oh, and Rob Eshman for connecting
and
us.
so it was Rob that
Rob.
said, when Justin emails you every 6 months about coming and getting together, maybe you should do that. He's selling your book at a bookstore. So here we are. So anyway, thank you. So those of you who know this story, I'll try and make it as brief as I can, but I'm guessing many of you don't know the story. My husband, I'll do this as quickly as I can, but my husband, Josh, who's there, and I were raised very middle class. Josh in Toronto, me in the Valley. There's a few other Valley people here. And we didn't use the word philanthropist in the house. That wasn't something we would use. Philanthropist meant somebody who was kind of hoity-toity and whatever, some other being. We were not what you call a federation family for people who are in the Jewish community. We weren't on the lists of these are the people who always give. We did, when I was a kid, we, Girl Scouts, and we did PTA, and we did those kinds of things. So very sort of middle class, average kind of thing. And after many years of us both, my husband and I both working as serial entrepreneurs, and I worked in the corporate space, we both did actually for quite a while, we found ourselves in a position where we were at the edge of becoming extremely wealthy. And we were really afraid about that. We were really scared. We didn't want our kids to grow up to be jerks. We this trust fund thing we didn't understand, and we said, we don't want to do that. And it was a very strange place to be. And so Josh was on my husband's here, it's the first time he's ever heard me tell this story. The story about you. So Josh has Crohn's disease, and has had it since he's been about 11, and in and out of surgeries and all sorts of things. And he was going on the last 10 days of this road show where they were going to be traveling all over Europe and everywhere. He'd been traveling for a few months, and I was handling all the financial piece of everything. Josh was handling the presentation and the technology and all of that kind of thing. And I was very concerned because he's traveling, and if you know anything about Crohn's disease, it's an autoimmune kind of thing. You need to be eating and sleeping and things like that. But at this point, I had spent about $350,000 on legal fees that we didn't have, all to get to this point because we owned a significant percentage of the company. And so we had to have special securities attorneys and special employment attorneys and trust attorneys and all this stuff. And I thought, okay, this is great. When this happens, it'll be terrific. And as we got towards the end of it, and it was sort of funny because the company went out Realty at the same time as Elon Musk, so he would actually see Elon back and forth while they were traveling around Europe and everything and raising money for this. And there's about 10 days left, and I'm really, really nervous. I have 5-year-old twins at home. I have three older children who were here, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do if this thing doesn't happen. And the attorney said, it's not real till it's real. And I said, well, when is it real? Because I've got all these bills that are going to come in very soon. And he said, well, it's really not real till I tell you it's real. I said, oh, okay, when's that going to be? He said, well, probably 10 days when Josh goes on his private plane for the first time and whatever, and we meet him, and it's either going to be thumbs up or thumbs down. And it could stop at any time. So it's a really nerve-wracking place to be, very exciting. So it's about this 10 days before. I'm worried that Josh has got to be healthy for this next 10 days. I'm really worried about him. I'm not going to see him until it's either happening or not. And so I'm super nervous, and so I sat down. It was a quiet moment. He had this one day where he was going to be home before the 10-day thing started. And I said, okay, let's take a breath, and Let's try and like distract ourselves. So why don't we do this? Why don't we decide where our first donation is going to be? We didn't even use the word gift. We didn't even know the parlance. So, but where is that going to be? What should we do? And he said, I don't know, what do you want to do? I said, well, we can really pick anything. I mean, assuming this happens. And I have to admit, there was a little teeny bit of a deal with God going on there. You know, like, please, if we do something really nice, we want this to happen. So he said, well, yeah, let's do that. That's fine. I said, well, actually, we don't have to pick one. We don't even have to agree. We can each pick something. And we don't know what they're going to cost. What do we want to do? How do we want to change the world? And so Josh said, very quickly, I want to make sure that our children don't have the same thing happening to them, don't have to face something like Crohn's disease, and that people who and any children don't have to deal with that, and also that there's a cure at some point. So I want to find out where the best research is being done in the whole country, I don't think he said the world, but the whole country, and trying to fund something that can provide research for that. I said, okay, great. I have no idea what that costs, but okay, great. I will work on that while you're away, because I don't know anybody there. I know the doctors, but treated us, but I don't know who to talk to. I didn't at that point know that advancement meant fundraising. I just figured, I'll talk to the fundraising people. And so I said, I'll work on that. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm the incoming chair of our president of our synagogue in Beverly Hills. And even though we didn't have a lot of money, they let me do that because I volunteered a lot. And so when we had a capital campaign going on. And the only reason I knew it was a capital campaign is because they hired somebody from a consulting firm who told me it was a capital campaign. And we needed $1 million to close the capital campaign. And I thought, wouldn't that be cool if when I take over in a month or two, that's been taken care of? And I'm a list person. I like checking things off the list, so that $1 million could be checked off the list. And it would be like done. So I said to Josh, why don't we give him $5 million? And he said, really, you want to do that? Are you sure? There's like political things at synagogues and all that. And I said, yeah. My father had died when I was young, and I remember him taking me over to a synagogue over on Crescent Heights and saying, here's a plaque from when I was on the board. And I thought, you know what? He would have really loved this. So let's do it. So he said, okay. And I said, hey, but guess what? We can make that call right now. I can check that off the list. I can actually tell them, because it was like I guess it was a Sunday. I think you were leaving on Monday. And I can actually say, we're going to do this assuming this works. And so we did. So I made the phone call. And I said, you know the story. And I said, hi. And these words come out of my mouth. I had to take a big deep breath. And I said, assuming this all works out, we're going to give you the final $1 million for the capital campaign. And I couldn't believe I said that. And I don't know what I thought was going to be the response, but it was something like the Publishers Clearinghouse with the balloons coming in the marching band. And nothing happened on the other side of the phone. Nothing. And I got the phone. I said, can you hear me? Did you hear what I said? And she said, well, yeah, I heard you. And she said, I don't know what to say. I said, well, I don't know. I guess you could say thank you. And she said, I don't think I can because I didn't make an ask. And then it was really quiet, and I thought, what kind of weird world have I just joined? And we both hung up the phone, and I thought, this is really, really strange. And Josh is looking at me like, what just happened? It was so weird. It just, nothing. This is my first time about giving money, and they don't say thank you in this world. And the phone rings again, and I thought, great. She's realized that she was just shocked, and she's going to say thank you. So I pick up the phone and I said hello, and she says, instead of saying, I want to say thank you, she says, can I talk to your husband? And I give Josh the phone, and he's looking like, what the heck's going on? And she says, do you have any idea what your wife is doing? And I didn't laugh quite like that. I was a little struck by that, but yeah. And I really thought this is very strange. So the final piece of this is that these were our two gifts. We did give the money even after that. The hospital, which was Cedars-Sinai Hospital, took 7 months to accept $2 million from us because they didn't believe we had the money. And it was a public offering. They could have seen publicly if they just looked. And we have computers for that, but they didn't bother because we weren't on the list. So therefore, we're not trustworthy. And so we went ahead and did it, but I thought, this is a very, very strange place. I don't understand this. And then we started giving, not these big giant gifts, but I thought, okay, I got to figure out what this is about when people don't say thank you when they say you have to make an ask. And found that not only me, but as several of you know, we've had charity events at our house for years and years and years. And so I started asking people who would come to the different events where we helped to raise money and introduce nonprofits to our friends and community. And turns out everybody had situations like this. every single person, young, old, it didn't matter. And I thought, there's something really wrong here. This is really strange. So anyway, long story short, you can read the rest of the book, but basically, I realized that there are no donors who talk. There's no donors. We can all say we don't like it when somebody says whatever it is they say, or they don't say thank you, or they don't treat us well. And I don't mean put us on a pedestal. I mean just treat us like we're not aliens, alien ATM machines, something like that. And so I asked a bunch of donors, like, why doesn't anybody talk about this? Where are the books from the donors? And they said there aren't any. I said, well, why not? And so the donors I talked to said, well, because we'll just hang up the phone and not give the money. Why should we take our time doing that? And I thought, well, but then it's never going to get better. And what about all these people that are all of a sudden, well, will have money and they're like me and go through an IPO and they want to give, and then someone doesn't say thank you, they might not be the glutton for punishment that I am, and they might actually say, I'm not going to give you money anymore. They're going to put it somewhere else. So I found out that was true. It's still true today. It's been about 5 years, and still I'm the only donor who's talking about this, and I made it my profession to learn both sides so that I could understand why do they do it that way. And I just got back last night. I just started a doctoral program at the Lilly School of Philanthropy in Indianapolis, and it was really interesting. Still, everybody there is like, why are you doing this? There's no donors who do this. And I thought, I can't think of a business where there's two sides. There's a buyer and a seller, and you don't find out what the seller thinks. You just don't talk about it. So nobody seems to do this. So here I am, and that's why I wrote the first book, and then the second book is really more of a manual, and that's what I do.
What do you attribute this to? I mean, and I've heard that story that you shared before, and it resonates because, like you, I've heard other things like that as well. And I've had the chance in the last few years to join a couple of boards from the foundation, from the giving side. Why aren't, it seems so obvious that these two sides should be in communication with one another, but they aren't. And some evidence of that is whenever there is a chance to hear from a funder, there are all these grant seekers who come to these events because they are so rare. Why don't they talk? Why isn't there more communication?
It's a wonderful question, and I've talked to psychologists, I think we have one here, trying to figure out why this is. One of the things is I think most people have a strange relationship with money. And I think whenever you're talking about anything related to money, people just all of a sudden get strange. And they also have this idea that donors are, and there are some examples of donors behaving badly, but there's also examples of fundraisers behaving badly and of anybody behaving badly. So, but they focus on those people, and then they think, oh my gosh, this is just these crazy people with money who are doing really bad things for the world. And the truth of the matter is they're a very, very small percentage. Most people, most donations from individuals and even a lot of foundations, nobody knows who they are. I mean, and one of my favorite stories is that when I go to talk to a lot of nonprofits, and when I was doing the work at the synagogue, we would get what I call surprise money, which is somebody who's giving a bequest. And you don't know when it's going to happen. You may or may not know through a planned giving opportunity or something that they were planning on doing it, but a good portion of the time, and I reconfirmed this with the people at the Lilly School 2 days ago, about a third to a half of those bequests come from people, and you probably had this happen, where somebody in the office says, who is this person? Does anybody know them? And you find out it's just some nice person who maybe volunteered, or who maybe had, tea with Justin periodically, or something that wasn't a hard sell kind of thing. And the place really meant something to them. The organization meant something to them personally. And so they leave money to them. And you don't get to even say anything to them because they're gone when you find out. And I think that this idea of lots and lots of people who just don't know. So I talked to this woman, Beth Breeze, who is one of the top historians in the world on the history of philanthropy. And I said, God, Beth, it feels like the rules were set up like 100 years ago. And she said, yeah, they were. And I said, well, what do you mean? How could you know that? And she said, because they were set up by the original 4 guys who started the foundations and continued Carnegie, and et cetera. And they really haven't changed since. I thought, well, how many things are there in the world that hasn't changed in 100 years? And it's crazy. I said, but by the way, how do you even know that that's true? And she said, because I hunted down their ancestors. And they actually were able to tell me and show me evidence that that's where these rules came from. So the rule about it has to be an ask. and that you have to pander to the person, and you have to comment on their clothing and their hair, and you have to kind of do whatever they say. Those were all created years and years ago, and nobody's had the chutzpah, excuse the phrase, but to change it. And I think a lot of it is because nonprofits are under-resourced, and there's also this idea that if you work for a nonprofit, you have to work cheap, and you can't make any money, and somehow this thing became a deal that I've heard over and over again, that, oh, well, if we're going to choose an organization to fund between 5 of them, we just choose the one that has the lowest overhead. And so there's a lot of movement going on in the world and in the world of philanthropy to change that, but it's like that just became the norm, and it's very, very difficult to change norms. I do find, on a happy note, that the younger and kind of younger mid-level fundraisers, they're aware of this. They're aware that it's being done because it doesn't feel good. The problem is they are now leaving. The average fundraiser stays at an organization for 16 months, and that number keeps going down. So if you're investing money and getting somebody on board, and you're developing a relationship with donors, many of you in this room, I'm sure, have had a relationship with a donor, with a fundraiser, and then found out that they're just not there anymore. And they're not only leaving their job, they're leaving their profession, because it feels awful. And they're being told this is the way it is. And I have heard from a senior fundraising executive, let's say, somebody who ran at a very large organization, and she said, we just don't have the resources to develop relationships with people. That's just not an option for us. So let's just go get the money. And it's terrible, and so we feel badly as donors. The fundraisers feel badly, but yet somebody's there. Some people do blame boards, and those of you who are board members, it's not your fault personally, but there are boards who say, just go get the money and come bring it, and we don't have time for a relationship. And that's a real problem. So the really good news is that there is a little bit of movement. I have dedicated, like I said, my life to doing this and trying to make that movement happen. And periodically I'll get a call from somebody who says, hey, I got a call from the guy who was running RISD, and another call from the person who runs the Leukemia and Lymphoma Association. And they both said, we're new to this. We don't really know the rules, but what's going on here is weird. Can we please follow your example, and can we do it the way that you're doing it? Which is wonderful. So little by little, it's happening, but it's hard.
And on this point, I mean, you shared with me before, if this idea that philanthropy is, it's a very personal expression of our priorities, values, the things we care about. They're inevitably and inexorably personal, and so those relationships are so key. And you've shared with me before in the past where you've become really involved with an organization, and there is a person that is your person, and then you get a call from somebody you don't know, and you said, where is this person? Oh, they left. And that must make you feel like, because if you're personally invested in this person and they don't even call you to tell you that they left, or somebody else calls you to tell you to explain, that puts you in a position of being like, I don't want to just be a checkbook for you guys. So what are the kinds of, and we've heard some of the horror stories, and I certainly heard a lot of them from some of you out here too, which makes it harder for people like me to do my job too, right? Because you talk about it from the philanthropy side, that a couple of bad apples make it hard for you because of what people then think of donors. It's the same thing for us. I'm always like, it drives me crazy when fundraisers poison the well for the rest of us, because it's a bad experience then for you. What are examples that you might be able to share of when it's worked really, really well, and you feel you're still involved with the organization, and what did they do to make you feel that you were more than just a checkbook?
Thanks. So my favorite story is about Big Sunday. Raise your hand if you know Big Sunday's organization. So when we started giving, first of all, there's no handbook on how to give when you're new to this. You're supposed to just figure it out somehow, because maybe you grew up with money and so it was around your house, so you knew. But between 60 and 70% of high net worth people in the United States today are first generation wealthy. So they did not grow up with this, and so they don't know. So my next book after this one, my publisher's here as well, getting ready for that, is going to be the Donor's Handbook. Like, how do you know what to give? How do you know how the system works? I didn't know why people, the other reason why this happens, where you were talking about you have a relationship with someone and then they go away, a step beyond that I've learned about only recently is that you develop a relationship with somebody and then you give them some more money at the organization, and then you get a new person, and the first person hasn't gone away. They've just been, you've been reassigned to somebody else. And And this first time that happened, I thought, I don't understand. So I said to the person on the phone, because I'm just that kind of person, I have to ask questions, and I said, well, so where did, Susie go? And figuring she went to another organization, they said, oh, she's still here. And I said, well, why is she's still here? Why isn't she working with me? Oh, no, because we've assigned so-and-so to you. And I thought, oh my God, I must have done something to offend her. What did I say? I feel so badly. And for those of you chuckling, you know that it's one of these rules. The rule is when you go into a different category of money, the next thing that happens is you get a new person. And nobody in the world, in the fundraising world, seems to think that that's a problem. That maybe you ask the person, the lower level person, do you have a relationship with this donor? And if they say yes, great, have that person and the more senior person work with them together. But don't say they're no longer here. That's just terrible. So I really thought I did something multiple times before, and it was only in the last few months. We've been doing this about 12 years. And it was only recently where I thought, oh, it was part of the way that you do things. I understand. So anyway, David Levinson did this amazing thing that I rarely hear about anyone doing. And so we're trying to decide where we're going to give money. And I said, well, since I don't have a map, why don't we pick something local and something Jewish, because we're involved in that, and something Middle East peace, which we're involved in, and something with Crohn's disease, and put them in buckets like that. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So I said, the local thing, I don't know what to do, but there had been and continues to be an issue with food insecurity. And so I said, literally just off the top of my head, I wonder what it would cost to feed everybody in Los Angeles who's hungry for like 3 months. Just made it up. So I asked a bunch of people, and who do I talk to? I don't know who to talk to. And they said, well, you call this guy David Levinson. Okay, fine. So I called David, and I said, I'd like to talk to you about this. And he said, okay, let's meet, let's sit down and talk. David did not come from traditional fundraising. He was a screen and TV writer, but he's been doing this now about 20, 30 years. And he came over to the house, and we met, and I said, this is what I want to do. And I said, so how much will it cost? And he said, I don't know, let me find out. So number one, he actually had the audacity to say, I don't know, and which was amazing. Most people would not say that, they would make up something. So he said, let me go work on it, and I'll come back in a couple of weeks, and I'll give you a call as soon as I have it. I said, okay. So they called, and he said, okay, I have the information. I said, well, okay, so what's the answer? And he said, can't give that to you, we need to meet in person. Okay, fine, whatever. So he comes over, and we meet, and I said, so what's the answer, what's the answer? And I have no idea what it's going to be. And he said, the answer is, I'm not going to give you the answer. And I said, well, why not? And he said, because that's not sustainable. The 3 months are going to be gone, and they're still going to have issues with the food banks. So I have another idea that my team and I put together. Why don't we use your money to fund some staff so that we can make this a citywide, community-wide volunteer program where people can compete even. We can have schools, they had casts of TV shows, they had banks, got together and said, okay, today is oatmeal month for these 3 food pantries. And they just kept filling them up, and people loved it. And they started saying, oh, I'm the August, peanut butter day, and do that. And so the really cool thing is that every year he sends us this lovely email. It is not curated, it is not in 10 different colors, it is not on fabulous paper, it's an email. And it says, here's where your money went, here's what it did, here's the people it served. And it's absolutely wonderful, but I don't know anybody else who would have said, I'm not going to give you the answer, and I think that's because he came from the industry, and he didn't grow up as a fundraiser. No one told him you have to be in awe of these people with money. And I just thought it was the most wonderful experience. The really cool thing is that over time, he actually needed less money to keep it going because it's kind of going on its own now. And if you can look it up online, it's called the End of the Month Club.
This is amazing because the part of this story that resonates with me, you talk a little bit about it in the book. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about it, which is that the example underscores for me the importance of a partnership. There was an exchange of ideas, and you came to a better result in tandem, better than what you could have done with each of you individually, and juxtaposed with which you talk about as being the norm for a lot of fundraisers, which is it's a one-way discussion. Like, this is what I need from you, and this is what I need, rather than what you describe as a partnership. So I thought you could share a little bit more.
Yeah, it was definitely a partnership. And another thing that I learned only recently, certainly in the last year, is that everybody thinks that fundraisers are intimidated by donors, and there's definitely plenty of them, oh, we can't do that because you have money, because you're a donor, we can't treat the donor that way. And really, it's a very few number of people who've been jerks, and yes, there have been jerks doing that, but I'm guessing 90-something% of donors don't play those games. They really would love to have a relationship. But for some reason, the fundraisers, because of those whatever bad apples or the rules that have come through time, have become a problem. So I think that the relationship has to be a relationship between two human beings. I've just created a new article I just wrote this week, and it's called "Be Donor Aware Before You're Even Donor Centric," because people in the industry poo-poo the donor-centric thing. Oh, everything's about the donor. We just have to do whatever the donor wants. If the donor wants this, we'll jump up and down. If the donor wants us to do something off mission, we're going to do it anyway because we want their money. And that's just wrong. And I tell fundraisers all the time, it's okay to fire a donor. If they are obnoxious, we don't want them around. There's plenty of other people who have money who would love to give. Just talk to them as human beings. And it's been an interesting thing because when that happens, it is, like it was with David, it feels really good for both sides. And those relationships mean, and this is, I'll give you a little piece of research, about 18 to 20% of donors who give a first-time, one-time gift will give the next year, okay? There's no other industry in the land, in the country, in the world, that has that small, where 4 out of every 5 people that you talk to are going to disappear and you have to do it all over again next year. It doesn't make any sense. That number has continued to decrease. It's continued to be a problem. And so the industry has stopped with blaming the donors, blaming this, oh, they're just jerks, or whatever it is. And it's time they blame themselves and say, you know, this is why you have to build relationships. People don't want to just give to you once and walk away. They don't want to feel bad about it. They want to feel good about it. And they don't really, well, the big piece I understood is that the fundraisers are, again, the fundraisers are intimidated by the donors, but the donors, you don't want to sound like an idiot. And so I did say, why didn't you tell me so-and-so was still there and now I've got someone different? Or why are you using these words that I've never heard before? And someone said to me the other day, well, don't the donors know about the donor pyramid? Don't they know what's happening? I said, like, why would we know what a donor pyramid is? There's no reason we would know that. Like, you know, why? It's just crazy. Why, you know, I didn't know. There's all sorts of things. When we started, I thought a fundraiser, as I said at the beginning, fundraiser would say fundraiser on the mail. So when I started getting emails from people I didn't know, and they said development or head of advancement, I thought, oh goody, they're not a fundraiser. They're not going to ask me for money. So, I mean, how would I know that? But when people say, well, why don't the fundraisers say something? I think nobody wants to feel stupid. And so when you realize, I actually don't know what they're talking about, and I do not understand, they're talking about, you know, whatever it is, or they're talking about, my favorite one is plan giving. Those, I'm sure many of you know what plan giving is. So there's plan giving and there's legacy giving. There's a huge association in Washington called the Plan Giving Association that has tons of money from all the financial services people, and they do plan giving. And I've said to them, when you say plan giving, because I don't know this world, I think you mean I plan to give you a gift. I don't know that it means it's a legacy gift. It happens when I die. I don't know that. How am I supposed to know that? And when you tell the fundraisers that, they're just completely blown away. Like, how would you not know that? And then they'll say, oh, yeah, maybe we do have. So it starts with language. It starts with realizing the other person's a human being. It starts with saying, we don't need to be intimidated by each other. We should be partners and do it together.
And it's something that for our younger colleagues that start, when it's the first time they maybe meet with a foundation rep or donor, I implore them just to treat them like anybody else that comes in there, because the truth is sometimes we as cultural organizations work better at treating people that come in from off the streets than we are a donor, which is my idea. It should be the opposite. But it's kind of the one thing that I wish people would know, is that at the end of the day, we're all people trying to forge a connection. And gosh, it feels so good for those of you who are on my side to make a connection, because it feels like this is how I describe it to people. First of all, the people that are interested in potentially giving you money are people who are, they could be buying another boat or another house. And they just decide to do something good with their funds. And then they decide to pick you. And it's sort of like, you know that thing you care about, that dream you have? I believe in it too. It feels incredible. So when there's a match, it feels great. And I wonder from your side, what is a tip if you wish people like me and grant seekers would know? What would it be?
I think the one that most people seem to not want to do, but I think everybody should do, is people come to me all the time and they say, I just met so-and-so who's, I'm going to go meet with them and they have a lot of money, but I don't know anything about them. I don't feel like I know enough about them. And my answer all the time is, well, ask them. I mean, really, it's super, super simple. It's like the kiss method, right? Just ask them. So ask them, what do you like to do? Why do you want to give? How does it feel? Tell us a gift that really went well for you. And find out. And I think a lot of times fundraisers don't want to ask because they don't want to hear that what that person's about is not a fit for your organization. Yeah. So the best thing you can do is you can ask them those questions, and when it's not a fit, you can say, you know what? I know a lot of other people in this industry. I'm going to match you with somebody else who has something, who does a really cool thing in that particular area. And then that person's going to be your friend for life, and you'll have a real relationship. But it's just like, it's like being, I tell people it's like a cocktail party or something. I mean, you wouldn't go out and want to have a relationship with somebody, or even just meet a new friend and talk to them the way that most fundraisers are talking to donors. You just wouldn't do it. So it's really about ask them and ask them as a human. I'm now calling it being donor aware. Just be aware that the other person is a living, breathing human being just like you. And the other piece, I know it's a long answer, is that everybody has been a donor. Everybody. I don't care how much money you have or had or whatever. You can take somebody who is homeless off the street, who's given somebody a jacket off their back. Everybody's given something. And one of the reasons for that is it feels really good to give. And when you're, as a fundraiser, talking to somebody and you're not allowing them to have a relationship with you or a partnership, or talking to them like a human, and not in a language that feels honest, not a language that feels like it came from a book. But when you do that, and I tell fundraisers this all the time, you're actually denying that person the benefit of doing something that actually, according to a lot of research, extends your life, makes you have a better life. It's something that feels really good. So why would you do that? Just to get back to the office and say, hey, I have this check, it's really great. So I think it's super basic.
So we're going to open it up to questions, I think. But I have one last question. Looking forward, you mentioned your kids. How do you talk to your children about philanthropy? And what do you think is in the future for the next generation?
So this next generation is going to be interesting, or the generations that are coming up now, because there's something called the Great Wealth Transfer, which you're well aware of, which are $67 trillion, I think, that are transferring over the next 20 years. Well, it's 20 years. We're about 3 years into it. And so all this money is coming from and a portion of it is going to go to charitable organizations. Those people right now are being treated, kind of like they don't exist. One of the things I suggest is that every organization put some young people on your board, please. You know, diversity is important, age diversity is important too. But put somebody, how can you be talking, and put some people that represent the people that you're giving to, and that kind of thing. So I think it's extremely important to welcome them with open arms, to also understand that they speak a different language. So when you say to somebody, because again, the rules for the last 100 years are you take the person to lunch or you go to a gala. I know my husband and I, when we gave this money to seniors, it had a caveat that they had to promise that they wouldn't push us to go to their galas because we probably didn't like them very much. So, and they have honored that, which is really nice. But yeah, you just, anyway, so if you are a young person and you don't really want to get dressed up and that's not your favorite thing, and you don't really want to go to this gala, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of them, probably more than there are not, don't push them to go to the gala. You know, that's it. Find out what they want to do. And if you, even though the rule is you're supposed to take some to lunch, I love to use the example of like the social media companies. I mean, really, you're sitting at Google and you're like, you know, drinking. I forgot that stuff that you're drinking to have for your lunch. That's out of some sort of protein shake or something. And you don't get up and you go to lunch with somebody for an hour and a half. You don't do that. So don't make me go to lunch. I don't work for those people, but I don't like having lunch for an hour and a half unless I really want to get to know the person. And if that's our first thing, and the worst thing to do is they say, yes, I just want to get to know you. This is, I'm sure we've all had this. Just want to, right? I just want to get to know you a little bit better. And instead of asking me about myself, they really just, it's very, very clear that the conversation at the end of the hour and a half lunch has been really just to get to the end part, which is, and people have leaned over, pushed me down from sitting at my booth at the restaurant and said, oh, we have one more thing to ask you. Can you give us some money? We need you to give us $100,000. And they pick up some number or whatever. Like, and as a young person, if you didn't even want to go to the lunch in the first place, you might just say, I don't even want to try this again. So the most important thing I think you need to do is recognize that there's a lot of younger people, a lot of people with money who didn't come from money, and they want to participate in this, but they don't want it to be a horrible experience, and they don't want somebody to say you can only do this if you do lunch. Or I know lots and lots of fundraisers, senior fundraisers, who won't let their lower level fundraisers, their front line, ask for money on Zoom. They just won't let them do that. They say, you can't do that. Like, why can't you do that? Well, it's just not something that we do. We can't do that. It's not authentic. No, actually, you're not authentic. And I would like you to ask me for money on Zoom because I'm happy to give it. So it's just understanding that and it is hard. I had a very well-known fundraiser tell me when we first started doing this, and she said, because you've got older donors who are used to doing it a certain way, and they like the lunch, and they like the whole thing, and they're maybe the 3 martini people, or whatever it is, and then you've got younger people coming up, and they've got money, you have 2 choices, because you'd have to learn this whole new language, and it's hard. So someone actually said to me, I have to make a choice, and the choice is, I'm just going to ask the older people for a little bit more money. I can't take the time to go learn the new language. And so that's a huge mistake, and it also means that we are growing a nation of people where the charitable sector is so important and fills in so many blanks that are necessary. And we're growing the sector and we're ignoring everybody who's going to be doing this and who wants to do it. And just one more thing I want to add that I think is fascinating. Most Gen Zs now are, and some millennials as well, but most Gen Zs, the research tells us, are actually volunteering in organizations to see what the organization's like, how dysfunctional the organization is, or if it's dysfunctional, see how those people treat them, how do they treat a volunteer? Now, the traditional way of thinking is volunteers are here, they're just worth little bits of money, they volunteer over there, and then the major donors are here, and the regular donors are here, and they are not supposed to talk to each other. Just do not have them do that. But guess what? Right at this very moment, there are people who are volunteering and saying, we just want to see what kind of people you are, what kind of culture this is. And so we need to be really aware of that and really greet anybody who wants to give with open arms. And our kids, we started donor advised funds for them. I don't know if you know what those are, but you can learn about that in the book. But we started them when they were 5 and started teaching them, you know, here's this money, we're going to put money in every year. If you don't spend it, it doesn't go to anybody, you know, it just sits there. But if you spend it, we're going to replenish it with that amount of money, and you get to give it to something that you think is really cool. So they gave it to, and we kind of made them do it, but we didn't say you have to give to something that we gave to, something that's important to you. So we adopted a dog, and they wanted to give it to the shelter where we got the dog from. And can we give them some money? And so, absolutely, let's do that. Or they did a little run at school, and it was a PTA thing, you got an ice cream party. Okay, for a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old, that's great. And now they don't really care about what comes on the other end. They're 18 now, and they just know that that's something that you do, and I think everybody should be doing that.
That's great. That's great. It gives me hope for the future. Toad up on the floor. You got questions? Yeah.
Can I use the mic or just
You've got one right there.
Hi, my name is Colette Black. I'm new to the Los Angeles community. I joined here to take a position at Jobs Vision Success, JVS, a workforce development nonprofit. And I'm just curious about, are there any nuances to the LA philanthropic community? I loved your comment about Zoom, and I don't want to do an hour and a half lunch. I came from the Midwest. We only did coffee. So this whole go to lunch thing is very new to me. And then after your comment, I have a quick comment about the donor or the person who left the donor. I'd love to share with you as well.
The person who left the donor.
Like when he said, this was my person and they're no longer here anymore. I'll just share real quickly. I was in that role And I was the person, and I had very strong relationships with donors I absolutely love. And the organization kind of had this scarcity mindset, and so they didn't want me to say goodbye because I could possibly take that relationship, which was never the intent. So sometimes it's not your fault that you can't talk to the donor. I just wanted to share that.
No, and it's not your fault. And most fundraisers work for organizations that, or they're either on their own and they do everything from soup to nuts, or, and I think it's 1 million plus of nonprofits are in that position. And then the large organizations that have, I've seen between 200 and 800 fundraisers on staff, you don't get a chance. You just gotta hope it works. And that's where I think a lot of people in this room can be beneficial. And by the way, welcome to Los Angeles. Thank you. And I think a lot of that comes from boards. And so if you are on a board, somebody suggested this to me the other day that they think every fundraiser, part of their job should be that they're on a nonprofit board for an organization that's not there, so they can actually understand that these are people who are trying to do good, but they have certain ways of thinking, and can actually communicate with them, which is exactly the same thing that I'm doing. I'm saying I'm a donor, I'm going to go walk into the field of philanthropy. So I think that that's super important. But as far as peculiarities about LA, I didn't know that there were places you could just do a coffee, so I don't know, maybe I need to go.
So much more efficient.
Yeah, and by the way, you're in an organization where the head of your development, you probably know, comes to a monthly meeting with all of my subscribers from my blog, do a monthly meeting with me online, and he's been, pardon?
Randy?
Yeah, Randy, and he's been,
Randy's the new boss.
oh, you're kidding? Well, now you know, Randy does, yes, and he's presents you guys absolutely beautifully, and he's been fantastic. So, and he'll bring, we'll talk. We do it once a month. There's people from all large organizations, small organizations, and we talk about something that's really happened that didn't feel right, or a way of doing something better, like this idea about, wouldn't it be cool if every fundraiser sat on a nonprofit board? I thought that was really smart, so I hope that's helpful.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, in the back.
Hi, my name is Mark Hayward. I've worked long enough not-for-profits over the years. My question has to do with, you've talked a lot about the fundraising role of staff. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the fundraising role of boards, and also, your experiences on maybe both sides of that fence, and if I think you just kind of alluded to it in the previous question that, maybe somebody needs to write a book for boards of directors in fundraising.
And not only have I been asked to write that book, but I have somebody who's been a prominent fundraiser who asked me about a month ago if he could write the book with me. So, yes, and there are boards. Have you read any of the board books? I don't know. Are they good?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I need to read more of them. So
Okay.
you should write one, Lisa.
Well,
This is
yes.
my...
So after we
This
sit
is
down,
my
we'll
nudge.
do that. We'll do the board one. So the scenario that I hear more often than not is somebody from the board, there was a board meeting and they said, why are we not bringing in more money? Why don't we have more revenue? Tell those development people to go bring in more money. Which is just sort of crazy. And very often, they're also, because that doesn't just happen. You don't just go out and the check is waving in the air and you grab it. And that's just sort of crazy. So the relationship piece of it, I think the most important thing is that they don't understand that it's a relationship thing, because it's also kind of foreign to them, right? Because a lot of them haven't been fundraisers, they haven't taken the time to get into this thing. And so it's like it's a strange position to be in. People join boards for all different reasons. Somebody once told me they joined a very big board because, and I think the person who's part of the organization is here, knows this funny story, but he said he was only on the board because he wanted to make friends. And that was it. Well, that's really nice, but what about the organization? And what we do would be kind of nice if you cared about that. And then there's a lot of people who say, just go get the money, and then they don't give themselves. And so one of the really important things I think about boards, to your question, is I think board members need to be educated, number one, into how incredibly hard it is to be a fundraiser. And how those fundraisers that are sitting here in front of me, I know this very well, but it's really difficult. And if you talk about those percentages like the ones I gave you earlier, they'll realize from a business point of view that just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you keep doing this? So, and then you can show them research. Look, and I think this works really well with boards. I think if the executive director, and I ideally if the chair of the board looks at some of these numbers, and there's wonderful research coming out about how people give and what inspires them to give and what inspires them to not give, and how hard it is for fundraisers, and why fundraisers need money for overhead, and why this idea about the less you spend, the better you are, because why? Like, why should that be the case? So I think they need to be educated, number one. The second thing is they very often think their job is to raise money, and they don't like it. A lot of people don't like it. There's some people who like it, but some people really hate it. And you always hear, I don't want to ask somebody for money. Okay, you don't want to ask somebody for money. That's okay. And I go to boards and I train you in this. All you need to do is, let's have a conversation about what we're looking for. You send an email that says, hey, I'm involved with this organization. I would like, I just want to introduce you to, Joe, who's on our team. And so he can just tell you a little bit about it. And you know what? I'll take that meeting every single time. So every single time, it doesn't matter, because if somebody I know is doing it and they're on the board and they're saying, will you join me? And that's all they have to do, because people like you can do the rest. You can bring him in when necessary, but he doesn't ever have to ask them for money. So that's a piece that gets lost all the time, and I think that's a big key to making it better.
That's great. Yes, question over here.
Hi, thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Thank you, this is so interesting. So this is, I thought it might be specific, sorry, this sounds really weird. Okay, I'm gonna just keep going. I'm Annie Buckley, and the question that I have is for donors giving to, so I'm a professor and I'm also founder of a program, Prison Arspec, it's represented in the show right now with the red day. But thank you. So as Prison Arspec has grown so much, we're under the Research Foundation at the university. And there's always conversation, should it break off and be a nonprofit? But we've been under that for so long, and most of our funding is grants, but we're in a place to start to seek donors and foundations. And will they be comfortable in general, I mean, you can't speak for everyone, but in your understanding, giving to a university research foundation for a program, or does it need to, like, do people kind of look down on that and would be more open to, like, an independent nonprofit?
So I think it depends. I personally, I think there's a lot of benefits to giving to a nonprofit that's breaking off, because I think I want to encourage more nonprofits to do well and do good. But also universities charge fees, and some of the fees you don't even know where they go. And I wish they went to the operational expenses of the nonprofit, but they often do not. And the universities can be kind of cold and impersonal. And so I think if you were able to communicate that to your donors, that this is a new opportunity for us to really get to know each other and have more of a relationship, I think it would be terrific.
Thank you.
Yes, in the front.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Baxter. I'm the immediate past president of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, our co-president on Burgers right there. And Lisa has been such an amazing part of our global community. What I'm hearing from you is that education definitely needs to be a part of this. So what does a good educational partnership look like between the fundraiser and the donor?
Thanks. So I think whenever the fundraiser reaches out and makes it feel like they actually want a relationship, it just means a lot. And one of the ways you do that is just not always asking them for money. I know somebody along the way said, whatever you send them, even if it's a receipt, ask for more money, ask for more money, ask for more money. So that's why one lovely thing I think a lot of boards do, I think yours might do it too, is once a year they just have the board members just call donors and say, I just want to say thank you. And it's a wonderful thing to do. I've done this for years for a couple organizations. And of course the person on the other end, say, I'm a board member, I just want to say thank you for supporting our organization. And the person on the other end doesn't understand. Like, and you're going to ask me for money? And you say, no, I'm actually not. I just want to say thank you. So you have to have moments like that where you can have something where you're looking for a relationship. And the minute that you see that exists, well, from a board member's point of view, their expenses are going to go down because they won't need to hire a new fundraiser every 16 months. And that, if they'll see that doesn't make sense. I really do think that the key to it is education, and I think it's statistics and research. I think if there was a onboarding white paper that everybody had to read or something with Board Source where, did you know that? And then these crazy statistics that just say this doesn't make sense. And most board members have some sort of means, because that's why they're very often on the board. And most of them have a little bit of a sense of business and know that if you're losing 4 out of every 5 people every year, that's probably not a good thing. So there's lots of other statistics like that and a lot of ideas of ways that you can do things. But I think that's really what it's about. I think we have to get this mentality away. Well, one of my favorite ones is this. This is a brand new piece of research that came out a couple months ago from Neon One, which you might have seen. It's about recurring donors. And so recurring donors are poo-pooed all the time. Oh, they're the small donors, they're $5 a month, that's nothing. But the research now shows, and this was about 150,000 people they queried, nonprofits they queried, so it was a really substantive piece of research, that people who give one donation and then the next year give another donation, but if they give their first one and it's a single, like whatever it is, annual fund just one time, they'll stay with the organization about 1.7 years on average. So some will stay for 20 years, but a lot of them are done. Okay? If you give a recurring donation at any level, $5 a month, $100 a month, it doesn't matter, you stay for between 8 and 9 years. And I think that's something that anybody who understands anything about business will realize, oh, okay, so if we added that, and you know, I'd want to see this on paper, frankly, somebody should show it in a very easy way, maybe with pictographs, but that one person is going to be worth this at 5 years and this at 10 years. It's also going to feel really good, but it's a whole lot more money. And I have not seen that done in a super, super clear way, but that's what, and part of it's because this research just came out, but I think they need to understand that by pushing people to get all the money you can out of them the first year is just a really bad idea and is not going to work. And everything we look at shows that that's not going to work. So, you know, again, it's treating the board members, we're here to educate you, that's part of your deal. And if you don't want to be educated because you're just here to make friends, you know, I'm sorry, maybe we should find somebody else for your position. Who's younger? Yeah. Okay.
And you and I had this conversation before about the misunderstanding of how this works, where, especially in terms of major gifts, you know, people sort of have this idea that, okay, you know, there's a big pitch and then there's a lunch or something, there's an ask at the end. And again, it's one of the things I wish I knew, and so much of we learn is just because we just see what works and what does not work. I've never gotten a major gift in less than 2 years from meeting, conversations, relationship. So most people just think about what happens at the end of the 2 years, but not all the cultivation that goes into that. And that's when you get to know each other. What do you care about? What really moves you? What excites you? And I don't know how people do it without having that information, because otherwise it's just a guess. It's a stab in the dark, which is not a really effective way of asking people for money.
Right, and I think we'll have you as the special guest at every board meeting that happens. So explain that. I kind of feel like I think we should try, on the fundraising side, we should try every way we can to convince board members. And that's something that if you have, one of the things I suggest is that if board members have been on board a long time and they're afraid to ask for money, and they've been there because they were friends with the original founder 20 years ago and they're still there, you've all heard this scenario, one of the things I've seen done really, really well is you create an ambassadors committee, and you say to them, you can be on the ambassadors board. We think that this makes sense. We want to bring some new blood in. Most smart people understand that. But we really value you, not just because of your money, but we value your commitment to the organization for all these years, and we want you to be an ambassador, and then you don't have to have the fiduciary responsibility, and you don't have to come to meetings. And I've seen this done really, really well. It takes a lot to take that step, but people who've done it, it's gone really well. So you kind of, over time, you create a board that really gets it, that understands this information, and I don't think, unfortunately, very often the money gets in the way, right? It's like, well, what if they don't give us money because I tell them that? Well, you know what? Then there's plenty of other people that you're not talking to. So it's okay. I think they need to just understand that, and I think this whole thing would work better if the board members were more supportive and we're not looking for that just give me a check thing.
Yeah, great. Well said. Well, listen, I think we're going to, do we have one more question? Last question, and then we're going to get to book signing, and there will be a tour with Michael Balagarza, where you might, Michael, he's outside. Okay, so if you want a tour, I know so many of you first times at the museum, so if you want a tour, there will be somebody outside waiting to show you around. And don't forget to pick up a book or two. Yes?
I'll keep it short. I'm Mark Daly. Lisa, good to see you. And as a donor and someone who's served on multiple nonprofit boards, everything you're saying resonates with me. I'm curious if you just quickly could talk about, as an independent, strong, wealthy woman, what has your experience been, and maybe some words of wisdom you might give if you've experienced any unconscious or conscious bias being dealt with by the philanthropic community as a woman? And also, what are you seeing in terms of board composition? Because I know on the boards I've been on, it's taken real advocacy to get an adequate number of women represented at the board level. So just curious your thoughts on that.
And let me just mention for those who don't know Mark, who schlepped down here from Santa Barbara, that he spends almost all of his life and work supporting women's organizations all over the world. So it's interesting you brought that up. When I was at the Lilly School, they just told us about their brand new Women in Philanthropy, I think there's a credential piece to it. It's like basically a new academic center for this kind of reason. My favorite, and yes, I have seen it. Well, obviously, my first story I told you about, does your husband know what you're doing? And it was pretty crazy. One of my favorite stories about this is if you don't know about this, you should look it up. What happened at Dartmouth University, where, does anyone know the Dartmouth story? Okay, so Dartmouth, there's this woman, she works at Goldman Sachs. She's a alum of Dartmouth, and she, for 20 years, they're sending her solicitations from Dartmouth for money, but they send them to her husband and not to her. He didn't go to Dartmouth. And she was a little annoyed by that, and instead of saying, I'm going to give my money elsewhere, which most people would have done, she said, I'm going to show them what women can do. So she called the head of the advancement vice chancellor and said, I'm going to get a bunch of friends together because I'm sick and tired of you doing this, and so I'm going to get a bunch of friends together, women who are alumni of Dartmouth, and we're going to get them each to give $100,000, and I'm going to raise you $1 million. And the guy, I think, patted her on the head and said, yeah, okay, I'm happy to do that. And she raised it right away. She's now raised $374 million for Dartmouth, all from women. She did it with millions of dollars after that, $1 million a person. Her goal was 100, I think she had 102, but then the rest of the money came from planned legacy giving programs, and it's been hugely successful, and hopefully she has a seat on the board if she wants it, but it's unfortunate that you have to do something like that to kind of change this, but it is definitely an issue. It's the same thing with young people. We're just going to keep this the same as it's been and keep our group because we're comfortable with them and we don't want anybody to shake it up. And life is about change. So that's it.
Thank you, Lisa Greer. This is the kind of thing. Yes. This is what I wish I had, honestly, when I started the museum. So let this be a great guide and roadmap for all of you, and make sure to stick around, get your book signed, and Lisa Greer, thanks again.
Thank you so much.